Tom Rodriguez moved to Ashfield in February, tracking mud and regret into his rental house on Maple Street. The previous tenant had left suddenly, according to his landlord, who wouldn't elaborate beyond that thin statement. The house smelled like pennies and old carpet. Everything seemed normal for the first month. Tom worked from home doing data entry, rarely seeing neighbors beyond waves through windows. The woman next door kept her curtains drawn. The family across the street loaded their kids into a minivan each morning at exactly 7:15. The voice started on a Tuesday. Tom was washing dishes when he heard it, faint but distinct, coming from somewhere below. At first he thought it was pipes or the foundation settling, but then it formed words. "Let me out." He froze, hands in soapy water. The voice was hoarse, desperate. Male or female, he couldn't tell. Tom dried his hands and opened the basement door. The stairs descended into darkness, the bulb at the bottom apparently burned out. He called down, feeling foolish. No response. He grabbed a flashlight and descended carefully, each wooden step creaking under his weight. The basement was empty. Concrete floor, exposed ceiling joists, a water heater in the corner. Nothing else. Tom searched every inch, finding only dust and a few dead spiders. He checked for openings in the walls, thinking maybe sound carried from next door. Nothing. "Please," the voice said, right behind him. Tom spun around. Empty basement. Empty stairs. He ran up and slammed the door, heart hammering. He convinced himself he'd imagined it. Stress from the move, isolation, too much coffee. He avoided the basement for 3 days, doing laundry at a laundromat instead. On Friday, his laptop died. The charger was in the basement, plugged in where he'd been meaning to set up a workshop. He stood at the top of the stairs for 10 minutes before descending. The charger was unplugged, coiled neatly on the concrete floor in the center of the room. Tom had left it plugged into the wall outlet. "Thank you for coming back," the voice said. Tom grabbed the charger and retreated upstairs, but this time curiosity outweighed fear. He called down through the closed door. "Who are you?" Silence stretched out. Then, "David Chun, I lived here." "I still live here." Tom researched that night. David Chun had indeed rented this house according to property records. 2 years ago. No obituary existed. No death certificate Tom could find. He called the landlord, who became evasive and hostile, finally hanging up when Tom pressed about David. The voice spoke regularly now, always from the basement. It told Tom about its life, about working at the hardware store downtown, about the girlfriend who'd left, about loneliness that grew like mold in damp places. It never explained what happened, how it came to be trapped. Tom started talking back. What else could he do? Move again? Explain this to someone? He brought his dinner to the basement door, eating while conversing with the invisible presence. David had opinions about politics, remembered jokes, got nostalgic about movies. It felt wrong, but also necessary. "You could let me out," David said one evening. Tom asked how. The voice went quiet for a long time. "The walls. I'm in the walls. You just have to make an opening." Tom examined the basement walls with new attention. They looked solid, original to the house's 1960s construction. But in the far corner, behind the water heater, the concrete looked slightly different, newer, poorly patched. He bought a sledgehammer at the hardware store where David claimed to have worked. The clerk, an older man with tattooed forearms, stared at Tom's address when he wrote the check. "You're in the Chun house," the clerk said. It wasn't a question. Tom nodded. The clerk leaned close. "Whatever you're doing, don't. That house has been trouble since it was built. Some foundations are meant to hold things down." Tom went home anyway. He stood in the basement, sledgehammer heavy in his hands, staring at the patched concrete. "Please," David's voice said. "I've been here so long. So long in the dark." Tom raised the hammer. Before he could swing, his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, check county records. David Chun murdered 3 people in that basement. Landlord's brother was the contractor who sealed the room. "You don't want what's behind that wall." Tom lowered the hammer. The voice began screaming then, a sound of pure rage that made the light bulbs flicker. He ran upstairs and kept running, leaving everything behind. The house still sits on Maple Street. The for rent sign stays up, but it never comes down. And sometimes late at night, neighbors report hearing someone screaming from below the earth, begging to be released into the world above. Karen Wright accepted the lighthouse keeper position in Port Salem without hesitation. The isolation appealed to her after the divorce, after the custody battle, after everything had turned to ash. 6 months alone on Beacon Point, maintaining the automated light system seemed like salvation. The lighthouse had been automated since 1987, but the Coast Guard still required a human presence for maintenance and emergencies. Karen would be the first keeper in 3 years. The previous keeper had requested transfer without explanation. The one before that had simply disappeared, though officials insisted he'd likely gone swimming and drowned. She arrived by boat on a gray April morning. The lighthouse rose white and proud from black rocks, surrounded by nothing but ocean and screaming gulls. The keeper's cottage attached to the base was small but sufficient. Kitchen, bedroom, bathroom, and a radio room for emergencies. The handoff was quick. The Coast Guard officer seemed eager to leave, barely walking her through the equipment before hurrying back to the boat. He paused at the door. "Don't read the old logs," he said. "They're just going to be archived. No point dwelling on them." Then he was gone, and Karen was alone with the sound of waves and wind. She found the logs that first night. 3 leather-bound books stacked in the closet, dating back to 1959, despite the officer's warning. She opened the most recent one. The entries started normal: weather observations, supply notes, maintenance records. Then, about 2 months in, the handwriting changed. Became rushed, harder to read. Something swims circles around the point at night, large, watching. A week later, it surfaces when the light sweeps past. Just for a moment, I see its eye. God help me, it has a human eye. Karen closed the book. Just paranoia, she thought. Isolation playing tricks. She'd be fine. She was stronger than whoever had written those words. But that night, when the automated light began its rotation, Karen looked out at the dark water, and she saw it. Just for a moment, when the beam swept across a particular section of sea, something broke the surface. Something massive, pale, wrong. She told herself it was a whale, but whales didn't have faces. Whales didn't have expressions of hunger. She didn't sleep. At dawn, she opened the log again, skipping ahead. It's trying to communicate. I hear it singing under the water. The song sounds like my daughter, but my daughter is dead. She drowned 4 years ago. Karen's blood went cold. She flipped through more pages, finding entries from different keepers across decades. They all reported the same thing. Something in the water, something that watched, something that sang in familiar voices. It knows our pain, one keeper wrote in 1973. It feeds on it. The more isolated we are, the more we've lost, the more it can reach us. Karen grabbed the radio. Dead static. She checked the equipment, everything appeared functional, but no signals went in or out. She was truly alone. That night, the thing surfaced closer. In the rotating light, she could see it clearly for seconds at a time. It was enormous, its skin mottled and diseased-looking. But its face was almost human, almost. It opened its mouth and she heard her daughter's voice. "Mommy, why did you let them take me? Why didn't you fight harder?" Karen collapsed, hands over her ears. Her daughter was alive, living with her father, but the guilt was real. She hadn't fought hard enough. She'd been too depressed, too broken. "Come swim with me, Mommy. The water's nice." She found herself walking toward the door, toward the rocks, toward the crashing waves. The voice was so perfect, so achingly familiar. The radio crackled to life. "This is Coast Guard Station Port Salem. Lighthouse Keeper, do you copy?" Karen grabbed the receiver with shaking hands. The officer's voice was stern. "Step away from the door. Go to the center room. Do not look at the water. Do not listen to the voice." "How did you know?" Karen managed. The thing's been there for as long as the lighthouse has, maybe longer. It feeds on guilt, on isolation. Every keeper eventually hears it. Most resist. Some don't. We find them in the water, if we find them at all. Why didn't you warn me? Would you have believed us? Would you have taken the job? We need someone on that point, Keeper. The light has to stay on. That thing can't reach the mainland. The voice outside changed, became angry, inhuman. The singing turned to shrieks. Karen spent 6 months in that lighthouse, never looking at the water after dark, never listening to the voices that called to her in the sounds of her daughter, her mother, everyone she'd lost or failed. She kept the light burning, maintained the equipment, and counted days. When her relief arrived, she didn't warn them. The Coast Guard had been right. Who would believe it? And maybe she thought, watching the boat depart, maybe everyone needs to face their own monsters eventually. The lighthouse still stands. Keepers still come and go. And something still circles in the deep water, singing songs of loss to anyone broken enough to listen. Michael DeLuca bought the old Orpheum Theater in Ridgemont for almost nothing. The building had sat vacant since 1998, its Art Deco facade crumbling, its marquee dark. The previous owner practically threw the keys at him, asking no questions about Michael's plans. He planned to renovate it into a community theater, maybe bring some culture to this dying town. Michael had money from his tech career, early retirement at 45, and dreams of doing something meaningful. The Orpheum would be his legacy. The first time he heard the children laughing, he thought kids had broken in. He was measuring the main auditorium, alone in the building on a Wednesday afternoon. The laughter echoed from somewhere above, light and innocent. Michael climbed the stairs to the balcony, empty. The laughter continued, seeming to come from behind the walls. He checked the projection booth, storage rooms, even the roof access. Nothing. He mentioned it to his contractor, Ray, who went very quiet. "You don't know about the fire," Ray finally said. "What fire?" Ray explained. In 1962, the Orpheum had been hosting a children's theater production. Wizard of Oz, 70 kids in the building, between cast and audience. Electrical fire started in the walls during the performance. The exits were locked, a violation of fire code that the owner had ignored. 43 children died, most from smoke inhalation. Some trampled in the panic. Michael felt sick. "Why didn't the previous owner tell me?" Ray gave him a look. "You bought a building where kids died for $30,000. You really didn't wonder why it was so cheap?" That night, Michael heard more than laughter. He heard singing. Somewhere over the rainbow, performed by children's voices. He recorded it on his phone, but the playback captured only static. He researched the fire obsessively, found newspaper archives with lists of the dead, saw photos of small caskets lined up outside St. Mary's Church, read testimonies from survivors who described the screaming, the heat, the darkness as smoke filled the theater. The previous owner's contact information led to a disconnected number. Michael tracked him down anyway, finding him in a nursing home 2 towns over. The man was 87, diminished, but his eyes sharpened when Michael mentioned the Orpheum. "You're living there? Working there?" "Just renovating it." The old man grabbed Michael's wrist with surprising strength. "Get out. Sell it. Burn it down if you have to. Those children won't let anyone have that theater. They died there and they think it's still theirs." Michael pulled away. "You're saying it's haunted?" The man laughed bitterly. "Haunted makes it sound quaint, like gentle ghosts rattling chains. These children are angry, mister. They were murdered by negligence and greed. They know it. And they hate anyone who tries to profit from where they died." Michael didn't believe in ghosts. He continued renovation. But the incidents escalated. Tools disappeared and reappeared in strange places. His workers reported feeling watched, hearing whispers. One carpenter quit after his ladder was pushed over while he was on it. Another found his lunch replaced with ashes. Then Michael started seeing them. Just glimpses at first. A child in 1960s clothing standing in the balcony. a group of kids sitting in the front row, watching him work. When he looked directly at them, they vanished. He brought in a priest, who refused to perform a blessing after entering the building. The priest left pale and shaking, saying only that the children were beyond his help. Michael pressed on, driven by stubbornness and sunk costs. The renovation neared completion. Opening night was scheduled. The local newspaper planned a feature. Ticket sales were strong. 3 days before opening, Michael spent the night in the theater doing final checks. At midnight, the stage lights came on by themselves. The curtain rose, and every seat in the house filled with children. They looked real, solid. They wore 1960s clothes, their faces excited and happy. They chattered among themselves, pointing at the stage, waiting for the show to start. Michael stood frozen in the aisle. Then the children turned to look at him. Their expressions changed, became accusatory, angry. "You don't belong here," one said. "A girl, maybe 10 years old? This is our theater." The temperature dropped. Michael's breath came in visible clouds. The children stood as one, filling the aisle, surrounding him. "We died here," a boy said. "We never got to see the end of the show. We never got to go home." They moved closer. Michael backed toward the exit, but the doors wouldn't open. The children reached out with pale hands. "If we can't leave," the girl said, "why should you?" Michael's heart seized in his chest, literally stopped, then started again with painful irregularity. He collapsed, gasping as the children stood over him. They didn't touch him, just watched as he crawled toward the exit, as he finally managed to get the door open, as he stumbled out into the night. He sold the building the next day, taking a massive loss. The new owner was a developer who planned to demolish it. But the night before demolition was scheduled, the Orpheum burned. Electrical fire, the report said, started in the walls. The whole structure went up in minutes. The developer's insurance covered most of his loss. He built a parking lot on the site. But sometimes people say, if you're there at midnight, you can hear children laughing. And if you listen closely, you can hear them singing songs from a show that never finished, from a performance that ended in smoke and screams in 43, small bodies that never made it home. Michael survived his heart attack but never fully recovered. He sold his house in Ridgemont and moved far away, but he still hears them sometimes in his dreams. The children, asking why adults keep trying to profit from their deaths, why no one ever just let them rest. The parking lot remains. And beneath the asphalt, in the ashes and earth, the Orpheum stage waits for a performance that will never come.